Hi guys, this is Dan doing another coaching video here. This time it's a Diamond Terran versus Protoss, a series of games. We're going to look at 3 different games and we're going to see if there's anything major we can learn from each of these. So this first game here is with our hero Grubson in the bottom left hand corner, and his opponent is a red Protoss called Bing. So I'm going to go relatively quickly through the start here. Grubson's got a pretty normal opener, so it's not the biggest deal in the world. A little bit of annoyance from the probe there. So what we're going to be looking for in the start of this game is what we scout from the Protoss and then how we react to that. So we scout from this that there's double gas, so it's non-standard play immediately because we normally would expect 1 gas, and we see no expansion. So let's see how Grubson opts to react for that. So he's opted to go for a high ground CC. I think this is correct. I'm not an expert on all the different Terran things, like I'm not a Grandmaster Terran, obviously. But I think if as a minor adjustment, CCing the high ground is pretty fine. We also then need to get a fast depot and a fast second gas, I think, unless we're going to be doing some kind of 3 racks. But we need to prioritize getting that tech up as quickly as possible. So I would like to see the gas come down a little bit faster. And then the depot seems a little bit late, but it's not the biggest deal. And we're just going to opt to stay on 1 base for a little bit longer than we otherwise would. Going for the bunker on the high ground, thinking it's some kind of proxy. Now, I will say that Grubson did spot that there was a second gate here. If he would have clicked on this, he would have seen that there's 2 gates. So it's probably not a proxy gate at this point. Like, it could be a proxy gate, but it would be like a proxy 3 gate and it would hit later. So I really would always want to try and get this bunker on the high ground here, rather than trying to hold this, because then it's going to delay your expansion and everything else. But I think it's still a playable situation. I don't think it's that big a deal, and maybe this is just correct, actually. The thing that I would say is, like, if you ever get supply blocked on your second Marine or anything, just build an add-on, right? Like, there's no reason to keep making naked Marines off of this racks before getting an add-on. And I think this is going to be tying into a bigger issue with this game in general, which is that it's easy to overreact to Protoss non-standard play, or in general, it's just easy to overreact. I think there's like quite a severe reaction to what the Protoss is doing in this game. In general, you want to have your own game plan that comes together, and you want to deviate from that game plan as little as possible. So if your original plan was to do a 7-minute bio push, you want to still do that 7-minute bio push. It might be a little bit later, or it might be a little bit weaker, but you still want to get to that point, right? And I don't know in this game what Grubson's original plan was, but it seems that he deviates from any kind of plan, and he becomes purely reactive here, right? So we've got the reaction, and then reaction, and this means that we end up not getting the gas on time the way we normally would. We get supply blocked. And then, as you'll see, we don't end up making the push the way that we would otherwise want it to do. One thing I will say across all these games from Grubson is that his Reaper usage is really good. I'm really impressed with his Reaper usage. He makes sure he gets a full scout at a good timing. So here he scouts the Twilight Council and the Forge. So I wrote in my notes just like an exclamation mark for this. It's like a 1 base Forge Twilight with 2 gates. This just doesn't make any sense. The only thing that I can think of, if you're going 1 base with a Twilight, it's either going to be Blink or it's going to be DT, right? Or some combination of the 2. So you can put that in a box, right? And think like, okay, I'm going to make like I'll make a tank plus a turret, right? You don't need to like go massively off the rails. But you do definitely want, I would prioritize like tanks and Marines at this point, right? So he gets, that all goes well. He gets a tech lab on the factory straight away. I would want to be starting a starport as soon as possible and saturating this gas. So I think the Reaper usage was good. I think that there was maybe a little bit more focus on it than you could be, which is pretty normal. But the important thing is that you got the scout. But I just feel like we need to get a bigger army going as quickly as possible. So we go for the bunker here. So we've already got a bunker here. We're going to put a bunker here. So I think he's expecting definitely a blink here. Like, he's expecting it to be a 4-gate blink all in. So he's probably died to this a few times. So you're relatively safe here, right? Like the blink isn't going to come now. just for the record. Like if you're doing blink, so we can even see if he was going for a blink, he'd be starting it now, right? Because he's just started his Templar. Let's see when he could have possibly started his blink, because one base is a little bit weird. Normal blink timing, he'd be warping in and hitting like 5 minutes type thing, right? So he could be starting it right now. So if he started his blink right now at 3 minutes, I mean, we could say like 4:30 type timing. I'm not sure the exact timing, but like it's not going to be now, right? So you don't need to build this straight away as soon as you scout that. You can delay it a little bit, right? So we'll see what time the charge actually finishes. And then we'll rewind. Right, so we're looking at still, even with all that, we're looking at like a 5-minute timing for the charge, right? And I don't think, hold on, let me quickly check. What is the difference between a blink? Let's see too. How long does blink take? It's 121. And then charge, so 2 minutes, and then charge is 100. So charge is actually faster than blink, I believe. And so we built this way too early. I can kind of get why, right? You're freaking out, but like you're not, if they are going one base blink, it's not going to hit you at 3 minutes, right? It's going to hit like 4 minutes at least. So you've got a little bit of time before you build that. So I would delay that so you can build more of other stuff. Like you could have had a second Rax a little bit earlier. You could be working on your stim, all that kind of stuff. So we see like the reaction from Grubson here has been to completely lock down, completely hunker down, and just try not to die, right? So we're making a Cyclone, and we're making 2 turrets, and we're still on 1 base. So this is all money that doesn't necessarily need to get spent. I would suggest maybe 1 turret is lots, along with saving scans. You've got 2 orbitals. And you'd also, if you are worried about blink, you don't want Cyclones. You want tanks. Cyclones are a useless unit, right? And since we've delayed all this other stuff, we don't have a second Rax making stuff. We don't have stim on the way. We don't have anything working towards that 7-minute push. We don't even have our +1 being started at the NG Bay. So it's safe to say that Grubson's been completely thrown off his plan. Instead, he's playing purely reactively. He's making Cyclones. He's going to try not to die. Okay, now what I put in here is that like the overall defense against the DTs I think was pretty good. You lose a Cyclone here, it's a little bit annoying, but like ultimately you've got 2 bases. You opt to go for a 3rd base. I think that's just not the biggest deal in the world. The issue that I have with all of this is that we're just not working towards a strong push, right? We're making Naked Marines and Cyclones off of 3 CC now. There's no tech, and this is going to be a problem. So like, we know that the Protoss is only just expanding now, so it's probably going to be some kind of attack coming. Obviously, I've seen the whole replay, and hindsight is 20/20. But if we think about like what you have at 5 minutes, we've got at 5:20, you've got 7 Marines and a Cyclone, right? Now you've lost a few things, but like you definitely want to have a much higher army count. You need to be the one having the big army, right? Even if it means not investing in the 3rd CC. I don't think a 3rd CC is necessarily the best response to any of this. I kind of get why if you're stuck on 1 base and you're floating minerals, but like in retrospect, we want to get the stim going as quickly as possible. We want that +1 going as quickly as possible. We want the starport. We still don't have a starport, and it's 5 minutes and 20 in the game. So it's just really important that we make better units and we make better tech choices here. Okay, so we finally do end up cleaning up these DTs, and I'm going to fast forward to about 7 minutes. So at 7 minutes in a standard, like a great build for a Terran, you're going to have, I mean, this is a bit tricky because you're getting attacked now, but like at 7 minutes, you want to have a massive bio ball with stim, hopefully +1, couple of medevacs, a Raven, a couple of tanks, you know, a really big army supply. And granted, this is a non-standard game, right? This has been a game where you've got a 1 base Protoss, you've been trading units, etc. But if we look at what you've got 11 Marines, 2 Cyclones, you don't have Mag Field, you don't have Stim, you don't have +1, you don't have Combat Shields, you have no Marauders. Your army is really, really bad. And there's not, like, yes, you're thrown off by this, but it's definitely possible to have held all of that and still have Stim by now, right? Like if you prioritize that and to have a big army. So I think that's really what's happened here is we've overreacted, we've played purely reactively, and now we don't have a plan of our own. And so what happens is the Protoss comes in with a big Zealot A move and kills you. And yes, this is really frustrating because from the perspective of the Terran, Protoss opened with DTs. The DTs didn't kill you, and so you should be okay. But the problem is that you were so focused on not dying that you never actually made something that could kill him.
Your base is under attack. How will you respond?
You want a piece of me, boy?
And so there's not really much else to say at this point. You're kind of just dead. You've lost most of your army. What I would say is you continue to make Banshees. You go 2-port Banshee and Cyclone. So there's just not really like a good mix here. Like the Banshees, I kind of get against Mass Zealot, you know, but where there's Zealots, there will be Stalkers. And so I don't really see this as being the best move. You also haven't been making tanks to keep you safe against stuff. I think if you want to go mech, then go mech. Go like 2-port Banshee with like tanks, but don't make Stim. And then just, you know, play mech if you want to play mech. But you've gone sort of bio plus Banshee plus Skytoss plus Cyclones without upgrades. So none of these tech choices kind of synergize well together. I would honestly suggest just not going with Cyclone Banshee at all. I would make 1 starport with medevacs. I would go for 3 racks, making Marines and Marauders much earlier, getting the upgrades much earlier, making 1 or 2 tanks from the factory before swapping it off to a barracks to get upgrades, and then making sure you prioritize infantry upgrades as well, rather than sort of going for this pick and mix hodgepodge stuff. No matter what the Protoss is doing, you should be trying to get to that convergence point of 3 Raxes, 2 bases, 3 Raxes, 1 factory, 1 starport, upgrades, and a 7-minute push. And then that 7-minute push might happen later than 7 minutes, but we need to be focusing on working towards that convergence point. But because we don't work towards that convergence point, we end up dying to the follow-up rather than the original push. So this is obviously just going to kill us, but like he's got Archons, he's got Charge, he's got loads of stuff, and you've got just naked Marines and a couple Banshees and a Cyclone, right? So this is just, sorry to do that point to death, but that's probably the main thing here. The second game is against the Barcode. So I just picked a couple random ones off of your SC2 replay stats. I think, hold on, let me switch to my notes here. Yeah, this is a Barcode on Moondance. And we'll go from Grubson's point of view. Try and make this as quick as possible.
SCV ready. SCV ready. SCV ready.
Okay, so we're going for our normal stuff. There are a couple key mistakes in this one. I think you end up winning this game. Sorry for a spoiler. But there's still a lot to talk about in this game. So
The enemy's in our base. Pay attention.
I don't really like the NG Bay block unless it's like a planned thing that's part of your build that you do regularly, but like I'm not gonna get too caught up in that. I think it was fine. You still end up getting yours on time, and then you chase this probe. Now this probe needs to die, right? 100%. You have the Reaper out now, and you see the probe go here. Go and chase that probe down. It's a free probe kill, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. I know you want to get to their base, but like you'd be lucky to get 1 probe over here. You can guarantee to get this probe, and it's also going to mean that you don't have to worry about defending this SCV. So I think this is just a clear mistake of like always go and chase this probe down. Honestly, I would like if you see it go that way, definitely. I personally just like bringing the Reaper down there anyway, just to check. It's going to check for proxies and cheeses as well, which is always nice if you find something. And then you decide to go for the 3 racks in this game, which is fine. It's a great build. I think the way that it's executed isn't ideal. So what I'm going to focus on is just this barracks here and what happens to this barracks after the Reaper's done. So with the 3 racks, you want to have the biggest unit count possible at the specific timing that you're going for. There's no negotiation with this build. It's like, you are going to do this. You want a massive amount of Marines and Marauders with stim and combat shields, and you want to hit and concussive shells, hopefully, and you want to hit at a really clean, crisp timing, right? So one of the keys to that is getting a reactor on this as quickly as possible. So in this game, you go for the Reaper here, and then you have enough money to buy the reactor now. So a reactor should come down right now, and that should be your first priority to start getting that Marine count up. Now, in this game, we don't get a reactor until about 2:30. So there's 30 seconds of idle time on that racks, which might not seem like a lot, but in a timing like this, that can be the difference between winning and losing the game, right? That's an extra... I think might even be 2 sets of Marines. How long do Marines take to build? So a Marine takes 18 seconds to build. If you had finished that reactor earlier, if you had built that reactor earlier because you've wasted 30 seconds, you can almost build 2 sets of Marines, which is almost 4 Marines, which is a big deal in a timing, right? So we'll say like 3 Marines you're kind of missing because of that, which is a really big deal. Then we go for the other 2 racks. So then this probe comes back in and harasses us because we didn't kill it, which is just really annoying, but you know, that's what Protoss are going to do. Especially because we didn't go for the Marine after the Reaper. So it's just a little bit unfortunate in that sense. And then we go for the tech lab. And then we go for the double tech lab. So then the other thing I'm going to look at is like the time on these. So these should all be building. The number 1 priority should be that these 3 are building and that we're not getting supply blocked, right? So we start Marauders. 1 Marine here. We could build a 2nd Marine. And then we're building Marines here instead of Marauders. That's not because we can't afford Marauders. We can afford Marauders, but we just don't make them. So this should have been a Marauder. This should be a 2nd Marine. And then a Marauder should start straight away on here, along with combat shields. So again, we're making pure Marine with this, even though we have the gas to afford Marauders. So that's just not ideal in that sense. Again, then we just got idle time here. So imagine if we had those extra 3 Marines from the start. We'd have a Marauder here instead of a Marine. We'd have another Marauder. We would have a very, very scary push. And then now we still have all this idle time on all these, right? And we know, we can tell that this isn't optimal because you can see the float. With this build, it's extremely tight. I struggle to spend I struggle to have enough money to start these units when I do this build, and yet we're floating, and we've got the NG bay going as well. You don't need this NG bay with this build, I don't think, because you're going for the version with Marauders, because you're going double tech lab, so you don't actually need it unless you get this a lot earlier and hit with +1. So I think just make the Marauders and get as many units as possible. So I'm confident that in this game, even though you do end up winning it in the long run, you'll just start, if you sort this out, you'll start just winning these. So you're hitting at like 5 minutes with 1, 2, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 Marines, right? Now that's not a super scary 3 racks. You could be hitting with a lot more than that. So I'm not sure the exact number, but you could definitely be hitting with like a few Marauders here, maybe 3 or 4 Marauders, and a few more Marines, and then you probably just kill him because he does this stupid thing where he tries to fight you here, but he doesn't force field the ramp. So you kind of just win here if you've got the rest of your stuff. All right, he doesn't have an immortal. He does have the battery, but he gets caught out. So with a Marauder with like combat or with concussive shells, you just win. So you end up winning the game with some good dropping and stuff like that. But it just makes the game harder than it needs to be. And in TvP, it's all about those pushes, right? Like in the first game, I said you need to be working towards that 7-minute push. If you're doing a 3 racks, it's all about that first push. You want to make sure that you get a really good trade for it, which I think you did, but it could be better. And against a better Protoss, you would have done almost nothing. So if he had hit that force field, if he had, whatever the case may be, you would have got almost nothing. So this is going to cap you. You're going to play against people who are 3-5, 3-7, and this version of the 3 racks is going to do okay. But if you optimize it, then all of a sudden you'll start crushing this guy, and you'll be playing against better opponents and being able to focus on your mid game instead. I think I'm gonna stop the analysis of this one here. I love this drop. Your drop control is really good. You end up killing loads of stuff with this drop constantly over and over and over again. And then the way you use your army once the drop is going is good too. But I'll watch the whole game just for satisfaction. So he tries to push in. You rightly just chill. Play patiently. This is all good stuff. While the drop is just absolutely massacring everything. I don't think there's any issues with that. One thing I would say is, like, you get your Ghost Academy relatively late. So, like, ghosts are a really big deal in this matchup. So just something to think about. And also make sure that you start your 2-2 as quickly as possible. It's just minor mechanical things, but won't focus on that too much. So yeah, this is a good game. This drop does so much damage. I think it's safe to say this drop won you the game. Your macro's been pretty good. You spent your money better than he has. And he leaves. Cool. Let's move into the next one. Alright, the next one is against, I don't know how to pronounce this, it's a Russian name. But this game was a great opportunity to talk about early game defense against Cannon Rush. So we are going to actually focus on the early game in this one because that's really what wins or loses this game. Okay. So you opt to go for a CC first. I won't get into this too much. I don't think this is a good idea. The other thing I would say is that in 3 games, you've done 3 different builds. Obviously, if you want to improve, the best thing to do is to just pick one build and do it over and over and over again. I know you play a lot, but it's going to be difficult to spot mistakes and to make adjustments from game to game when there's so many variables being different, especially when you're doing something as bold as a CC first. So see in this game, it ends up being a little bit awkward because you get a probe going for a cannon rush, multiple probes cannon rushing. So at this point, you know he's cannon rushing, and you've opted to go for a relatively late racks because you went for the CC first. But this still shouldn't be the end of the world. You've spotted it, and you're going to pull probe. So I think your cannon rush defense starts as being okay. Obviously, the priority here is going to be to get a full wall off, get a marine, bunker if you want, and then tech as quickly as possible to tanks or cyclones, whatever the case may be. Probably cyclones, because usually the follow-up to this is like a proxy Stargate. Because Protoss is almost never going to kill you with the cannon rush because you're Terran, you've got marines. Like, it's just very rare that it will kill you, and this cannon rush isn't done particularly well. So your goal should be to just like stop the cannon rush from getting up here on the high ground, and then go for fast, cyclones or whatever the case may be. So, again, he does this sort of weird version. I think you do a good job. You kill that. You see him cannon rushing the low ground. You can ignore this, right? Like, you could float this over here and still mine from it. You can float it up here and just keep it in your main. You can put a marine on hold position up here and just kill these. There's lots of options here. This is not a good cannon rush. But it becomes more successful than it should be because of like your decisions, right? So like, okay, so, and I know you probably know this, but this is a good reminder. If he's got high ground vision, then these cannons will kill this marine. So you need to kill this first. All you need to do is deny this high ground vision, right? So we need to keep this marine on hold position right here, make more marines, okay? Instead, we send the marine over here. And now the marine's gonna die because he's got high ground vision, right? He focuses the CC for a second, but as soon as you pull that CC back, he's going to die. So we need to make sure we kill this ASAP. There's no reason to lose that marine. And then the other thing is, it's over now, right? Like, the cannon rush is over. There's nothing on the high ground. There's nothing attacking you. You literally just need to hold position this marine here, and then go for a factory, because the factory units are going to be the thing that lets you transition out of this and kill this. You don't want a bunch of bio in this. You want to tech as soon as possible. So this second gas has to come down straight away. We want the factory, we want cyclones, etc. Instead, we lose a marine and we go for a second Rax, which isn't going to do a whole lot for us. So then he starts putting these down here. Now these cannons literally don't matter, okay? These are useless cannons. This is now a new cannon rush that is attacking this. So this is finally a cannon that can actually attack something of yours. So all we need to do is pull this marine over here, and then we're good to go, right? But instead, this marine just sits. He does nothing, and then you build a bunker that's not in range of that. So you don't need to build this bunker even. You can literally just put a marine there, and you'd probably be okay. But instead, he ends up getting these marines. He ends up getting the cannon up, and then now he can actually attack this supply depot. And now this has become a lot more annoying. Notably, while all this is happening, we have no tech labs on either of our barracks. Oops. And we have no factory, and we get a second gas relatively late. So our follow-up to this is really, really weak, and we're going to start now taking damage to this. So in summary, when you get cannon rushed, pull probes the way you did, pull SCVs the way you did. That was really good. And then try and deny the cannons that are warping in if possible by just hold positioning. Don't fight cannons that aren't attacking anything. These don't do anything for him, so just ignore them. And get a factory as soon as possible. So this one does. So we're kind of doing like a 2-1-1 here. I mean, it could be good if we do like a double medevac drop in his main. That would be kind of cool. But that we'll see what ends up happening. So we go for another bunker. Probably an overreaction. 2 bunkers on 1 base. It's probably not necessary. 1 bunker should be more than enough. But yeah, you do end up cleaning this up in the end. And despite all of that, again, I'm criticizing all these things with the defense. After all of that, you still end up cleaning it up. That's how bad this cannon rush was. And then we get the tank. Very nice. And then now you can go and push. So I think this is all fine, right? So now you're going, okay, I've got a nice little mix here. I've got a cyclone, marine, tank. You've been relatively busy. You've gone for a 3rd CC. I think this, I mean, it's fine. I personally just don't like going for a 3rd CC. I'd rather just make more barracks and go kill him. But it is what it is. So this then becomes a really weird game. Because you go and scout him. And then you see what he's doing. So this situation now is different than what we would have thought, right? We would have thought that we wanted to be very aggressive and to push in the front because he's a cannon rusher and he's just died, right? But instead, what he's done, he's gone for no units. He's gone for a ton of cannons and batteries. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 150. He's got like 1,000 minerals. So you can double expand now, do whatever. I think you end up doing this, but you don't need to kill him. You see that he's got a Stargate down here. So you kind of know he's just going to play Turtle Sky Toss, okay? So at this point, you recognize that it's Turtle Sky Toss, but the decision-making becomes a little bit muddled here. So once you scout that he's gone, I think you still try to get some damage done by just scanning and that kind of thing. I would have liked to see a Liberator here get the high ground vision so that you don't, like, instead of trying to get damage done with it, knowing that he's got a Stargate, just like bring the Liberator to the front, get high ground vision, and keep the shelling going. Would have been nice to see. But I'm not going to nitpick too much. But yeah, again, we keep losing these Marines because they're not held on hold position. I think at this point, it's absolutely okay to just go, you know what, I'm probably not going to kill him here. Because like a single Void Ray with all these batteries and cannons is probably going to hold you. Instead, just like go into your anti-Sky Toss play, right? So let's see what we end up doing. We build a turret, we double down. We make another Liberator. And then we use more scans on shelling. So this is just, again, once you realize that your opponent is building this much into defenses, the thing to do is to just like double expand and make like the perfect army and max out. And then there's no way that his max out will be better than your max out, especially now that, you know, he's going triple Stargate on 2 bases. So, you know, that we don't need to fight him here. There's no reason to let these cannons get value. Okay, so yeah, I'd be going home at this point. What we want to do is retain our army and make as big an army as possible, and then once we're maxed, then we can fight. Because he's, you know, he's on 2 bases. He's invested loads into that. So we now see what your anti-Sky Toss build is going to be. So we've got a bunch of units at home. We've got a bunch more Raxes. We've got a bunch more starports, and we got the second engineering bay, all on 3 bases. So I think this is going to be a little bit of a jumbled response to Sky Toss, right? I would say pick one response. Either go mass starport Viking with, you know, with some bio, or go for mech like Thor or whatever the case may be, or go for just like bio tank with good upgrades, right? Instead, we go for 2 factory, 3 starport, 6 barracks. It's just a bit of a jumble, right? We want to get a reactor on the starport as quickly as possible. We want ghosts, and we want to have like another base probably as well. So I would say we should have more workers on this base as well. Like I don't know why we just don't have that many workers. We have fewer workers than the Protoss does, even though we're on 3 bases. So we definitely need to be upping that and being more consistent with the worker production. And then we need to make sure that our build is a little bit more clean. So I don't really get what these factories are doing, quite honestly. I don't think they do a whole lot for us. I think instead we want a Ghost Academy, we want lots of barracks, and then we can just like move with a shitload of Marines is probably what I would suggest. We don't necessarily need to go super crazy on tech. We just gonna have way more than him is probably a safer bet, especially if we know he's on 2 bases. And the other thing that we want to do is stop bleeding out units at the front. We want to focus on getting one big massive army. Sky Toss is really good at like whittling away at small amounts of units until they finally have a big advantage. But you end up getting a ton of time to build up your forces here. So you do end up building, you do end up moving out here and bleeding out a bunch of units. And denying his 3rd. I think denying the 3rd is a really good idea, but like consolidate your forces, make some medevacs, and then deny the 3rd. And now you've got mass expansions, right? So you've got like base here, you got base here. I don't hate this, but like it's more important that you just, it's way more important that you just get, like, you don't even have combat shields yet, right? So it's just prioritizing things. I think you're rushing to get every possible piece of tech, every possible base on the map. But you don't need to do that, right? You could just stay on 3 bases, deny him, keep him on 2, and get good upgrades and like go on 8 racks. Like 8-1-1 is totally fine off of 3 base, or even with like a relatively late 4th. And then just keep denying the space. You don't need to overreact the way that's happening here. We want to stop bleeding out units, especially since we don't have medevacs here. We end up overstimming all these Marines. So then what happens next is really heartbreaking, because I think you once again take your whole army of overstim Marines with a handful of Vikings, and the Vikings don't have great upgrades yet. And we've got every base on the map, and we take a fight against this army. Now, if you've got every base on the map and you've got all this infrastructure, why fight? There's absolutely no reason to fight this. I know it's scary because the Protoss army like feels like it's invincible and you want to kill it as soon as possible before it gets to like a critical mass, but like all he's trying to do is get the ultimate army. So what you need to do is to consolidate your army and max out, because you're going to max out way faster than he does. And if you're maxed out and he's not maxed out, he's not going to be able to take a 3rd, and you're going to be able to keep building that infrastructure, keep building more stuff, right? But we don't need to fight him right now. The worst thing we could do right now, when we have 8 bases, we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 bases, and he's got 2, the last thing in the world that we need to do is fight. But this is what happens all the time, and this has got me quite a few times as well. So then we go in and we fight. We've got all these stim Marines. we've got some Vikings and we've got some Marines, but we've got no medevacs, we've got no ghosts, we don't have our 3-3, like we're only on 1-1. This is not the fight that we want. This is the fight that he wants, and then you're going to have to rebuild all of this, which is going to be really annoying. So don't fight until you're maxed out in this scenario, I would say. Because all he's going to do is whittle down those units, and then now he's got... Once he beats your army, then he's got an army and you don't have an army. And now he wins. Now this is just... Now it's going to feel like Protoss is bullshit, but like you didn't have to take that fight. Right? Let's see, what else did I say? Yeah, so I think at this point he's got proxy bases all over the map, which is super annoying, right? Because you've been under the impression that you were fighting a 2-base Protoss this whole time. Now, this is like really annoying because it's not normal. Like, this isn't normal that they'll build this many proxy bases, right? I would say, just as a rule, if you're ever containing someone on 2 bases, so like right about here, right about at like sort of 10 minutes, when you see someone just turtling this hard on 2 bases, just good practice is to send 1 Marine to the edges of the map. I do this every single game. Whenever I contain someone on 2 bases, the first thing I do after containing them is send Marine spotters out to check for proxies. And you'll, I mean, more often than not, this kind of player, the guy who goes cannon rush into sky toss, this kind of player is always proxying bases. I know it's like you haven't seen anything guaranteed to make sure this has happened, but this is just like a star sense thing where if you're containing someone on 2 bases, you should always check for proxies. I know it's just another thing to remember, but it's definitely a good idea to do. So in summary for this game, with the cannon rush defense, just hold the high ground. Like, just be you need to get it to the point where it's just like a passive defense where you're like, right, I know I've got a Marine here or a bunker here, and I know his cannons aren't attacking anything. It's over. I'm going to get my factory and prioritize getting my tech units out as quickly as possible. Once you scout that they're going sky toss and they're building this many cannons, just build expansions of your own. Once you realize that you're containing them on 2 bases, check for proxies. And then also, when you're going for anti-sky toss, don't go for everything in the kitchen sink build. Go for one clear option. Go for either a mass air transition, or go for mass bio, or go for mech, but don't go for all 3 of those things. Just pick one, do it really, really well, and have a really clear army composition. And that would usually include upgrades for one of those types of units, like bio, and getting your stim back and combat shields, and etc. And always get medevacs. Even against sky toss, you still want medevacs because you're going to be stimming your Marines a lot, and the Marines can fight it no problem out in the open as long as you have more economy than him. You should be able to get good trades with Marine bio or Marine medevac. Even with tanks is fine as well. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to say. I know this is a little bit of a long video, Grubson, but I had some free time this weekend and I wanted to help you with the PvT, because I know TvP is a really, really tough matchup, and it's holding you back for sure. I've seen your TvP win rates, and your TvT and your TvZ is really good. You just need to work on that TvP. So don't be so afraid of the Protoss. Be confident in the power of Terran, and try and just have your own game plan and get back to that game plan as quickly as possible. And you should see a bit of a drastic turnaround there. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.